Tim Holden, appraiser at SF Holden, discusses the steps he goes through to arrive at a valuation for conservation easements and the importance of correct pricing for the government and the landowner. We hope you enjoy.
In Our Expert Opinion podcast is brought to you by SVN Saunders Ralston Danzler Real Estate, a full-service land and commercial brokerage with over $4 billion in transactions since 1996.
Chad wasn't speaking, but that was his voice.
That's my voice.
But this is an Our Expert Opinion podcast. By now, Chad, are you and I experts in anything? Running that gator.
No, just a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jack of all trades makes you a master of none. But I know that there's a second part to that quote, but I don't remember what it is. But it basically is saying, like, it's okay to be a jack of all trades. Anyways.
I feel like it's okay.
I think it's okay.
I'm okay with myself.
Well, that makes one of us. So I'm Linda Schultz, one of the hosts for the podcast, and I am joined by my trusty sidekick, Chad Mills.
I'm going to call you the main host.
The main host.
Yeah.
This also sounds like a horror movie kind of thing, you know? No, I really am loving these remote podcasts because I get to have you in the chair next to me, and I feel like you've had some really good questions, some really good convo starters.
That's what I'm here for. Think outside of the box.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now I have that song Out of the Box stuck in my head. But we are joined today by Tim Holden. Hi, Tim.
Hey, guys.
Good to have you. Chad and I got to talk with you a little bit yesterday, and I don't think that I had met you before, but Chad, have you met Tim before?
I haven't. I was actually telling JB earlier that I've shot some property for you before, and I know property down in Martin County shot for you, Lychee Farm. Is that correct? Yeah. So heard the name, done some work with you before, but never met you in person, I don't think.
What is a lychee?
Fruit.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a fruit.
What do they put it in?
Lychees.
Boba tea? I don't know. I don't think I've ever had it, obviously. So I need to become an expert in that.
Give it a try.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Yeah. But so Tim was an agent here in our office. I believe he still is. But more importantly, he does appraisal work on one of our favorite things to talk about on this podcast, and that would be conservation easements.
That was not rehearsed.
No, it wasn't.
Well done.
Good job, bud. So, which for as many people as many guests as we've had on this podcast talking about conservation easements, I still don't actually know what they are, what their purpose is. You know, I took my property law class. They were talking about easements, whether it, what is this, like runs with the, maybe it's not even runs. See, I didn't even pay attention to that. So I really don't know. But I do know that appraisal work is very difficult because here in office, you know, agents have to do a BPO, a broker's price opinion, and it is truly one of the more difficult aspects for me in this line of work because I feel that it's very hard to value land and buildings because no two pieces of land are the same, and I feel that no two buildings are the same. So I would really like to talk about that with you today and see if we can't gain a little bit of knowledge.
Well, good. I'm glad to be here.
Good. So first of all, where are you located?
Palm Beach Gardens, Florida.
And what is the name of your company?
SF Holden, Inc. And we're real estate appraisers, and we have been in business since 1964.
Now, I know that there's no way that you could have been working since 1964. But, I believe yesterday you said that your dad and granddad were also appraisers and that your granddad was an appraiser before that was even a thing.
Yes. And I guess one way or another, we've been in the appraisal industry since its beginnings.
And your granddad was up in New York?
Yes. He worked for the Bank of New York and also, and then afterwards, Marshall Stevens.
That is.
And he started doing valuations up in New York when the banks were loaning on some of these big buildings, and they had to make sure that their loans were solid, and essentially.
Yeah, that is a really, I can't imagine just kind of being out there on your own. You get to kind of make up all the rules. And that was, I'm sure, a really challenging endeavor.
Well, and it was before appraisers had rules and licensing, and it was kind of like the Wild West of sorts.
That's probably a lot more fun, though. But now you do appraisals, and I know you really don't do residential, and I can't blame you there. That is sort of, that's not our expertise either. So please just tell us a little bit about what you do.
Okay. Well, I do real estate valuations in Florida, east to west coast, primarily south of Orlando. And I focus, and I guess our niche would be agricultural lands, also conservation lands. We work with state, federal, and water management districts, along with other private entities.
We had somebody from I think who had worked with the water management district come in on the podcast. Again, still don't know a thing about it. We had a really great conversation with him, but I would imagine that working with any type of municipality, it has its obstacles, and kind of red tape to work through. But
the bureaucracy of it all.
Yeah, the politics. So I'm sure that that's difficult. But, I think what I would find most difficult about your job is, like, how do you even value an easement, and what does it mean? And do you have equations, or are you just making it up as you go?
I'm going to say comps.
Comps.
Since I don't have my real estate license, I hear that word thrown around a lot. I'm going to say comps.
Yeah. What are the comps?
Well, Linda, that's a good question. And I guess to start things off, we actually don't value the easement. We value the impact of the easement on the property. And we do that in one appraisal report. There's actually two valuations in that single report. We would value the property in the before situation as unencumbered, as it is right now, also known as fee simple. And then we value the property under a hypothetical condition that the proposed easement is in place. And the difference between those two numbers is the impact of value of conservation easement. And that's what we estimate.
Maybe I should start at the beginning. What is a conservation easement?
Well, I guess in its simplest terms, the conservation easement, when you place one on a property, you give up your rights. And every property in fee simple ownership, you have a whole bundle of rights, including the right to lease the land, a right to sell it, all the rights that are kind of granted to us Americans to do with your property.
So you have mineral rights, you have air rights, you have water
Yes.
rights. Yeah.
Yes, and then also, but the
Development rights.
the use of the property has to be kind of within the applicable zoning and land use regulations. And when you place a conservation easement on your property, some of the main terms of these easements is you give up a lot of your residential rights and subdivision rights. And also you give up sometimes you give up the rights of how you can use the land in itself. Most of conservation easements, you give up your mining rights. And you also give up, many times, you give up the right to convert the land into more intense agricultural uses such as farming, or and so in its simplest terms, the conservation easement, when you place one on an unencumbered property, is you give up a lot of your rights and uses to the property, but in turn you get compensated for that.
And you maintain.
That's where us as an appraiser comes in.
Yeah, and I think yesterday you said that you maintain ownership,
Yes.
technically of the land, but you just don't have the rights to use that portion of the land the way that you normally would. And I don't know, I think that's a very strange thing to comprehend because, normally if you have ownership of a land, I would think that you could do whatever you maybe wanted to that was in the, zoning or future land use.
Right.
So that would be, I think that's a really tough thing to think about, you maybe even driving past this piece of land every day, but you can't do certain things with it or on it.
It's a big decision for a landowner to make. And it's not a decision that you should make lightly, because you're giving up your rights to use this land
And all future rights.
certain rights.
And all future rights, correct?
Yes. Yes.
So even
These easements, they go into perpetuity.
ugh, I hate that word. I just remember this thing. It was called RAP, the Rule Against Perpetuity. I never understood it. Probably never will. But it's interesting to me because it's like if you were to sell a piece of property, that easement comes with the property.
Yes.
So the holder of that easement can come back and kind of, I guess, do whatever they intended to do within that easement. But, why would a property owner consider, having a conservation easement on their land?
Well, in its simplest terms is for the compensation that they get for placing the easement on the property.
Okay.
It enables the property owner to retain ownership of the land, but you're selling the rights. And it a lot of times has to do with money. Also, certain landowners, has to do with legacy.
Okay.
And cattle ranchers and farmers sometimes would like to see the property retain in its natural state, and that being their legacy. And then also, it can have to do with estate planning, with the funds for your compensation. It can also do with sometimes with I guess family planning and long-term future plans, where you can retain ownership of the property, and then you can do whatever you need to do with the compensation that you get for placing the easement.
And who is it that's coming in and purchasing these easements? I mean, is it just somebody is it Chad walking up to a landowner and being like, I would really like an easement on your property? And obviously they're going to say no, but
Believe it or not, some of the very first conservation easements in Florida are held under some private individuals.
Oh,
although
you're
that's
kidding.
very rare.
Yeah.
You also have certain nonprofit organizations, the Nature Conservancy for one,
Okay.
purchases conservation easements, other environmental groups, but the main sources, purchasers of the easements would be the state of Florida, federal agencies, and also water management districts.
I guess I can understand why a water management district would be interested in having a conservation easement. I know, obviously, watershed is a big deal here in Florida, so I can definitely see why they would. But why would, Florida or even the federal government have any interest in an ag property?
Well, in certain regions, they, I guess in the simplest terms, they don't want to have rooftops.
Okay.
And in certain areas, and then also they want to keep agricultural uses and agricultural production, and that's kind of long-term goals for the state and federal government, and is it appropriate for every piece of real estate? No. But is it appropriate for some and many? Yes, it is. And one thing to keep in mind is typically when a property owner places a conservation easement on the land, it's voluntary.
Okay.
And it's typically not done via eminent domain, for instance. And so these are voluntary easements, and so and a lot of times property owners they've put a lot of thought into these, and also thought into the rights that they retain after the conservation easement is in place.
Now, I know that a lot of our clients, especially our ag clients, are really proud of, the land that they have because maybe they got it from their dad or from their dad's dad. So I think it's important, that people know that there's this option to kind of preserve their legacy or, their life's work. I don't know that many people would know about it. Would you know about it?
About conservation
Yeah.
easements?
Well, now you would.
From being here and being in the industry. And I mean, I've shot a lot of pieces of property that are probably never going to go actually on the market, that they are for a proposal for some kind of easement. And a lot of times when you walk onto a property that you're there to shoot it for a conservation easement, right off the top of your head, like it's some kind of wildlife corridor. It's a habitat. You can tell that it's never really been touched before. It may have some fencing, cross fencing, but you look at it and you're like, this is Florida in its pristine.
Well, you know how they say keep Austin weird? Maybe it's keep Florida, Florida.
Yeah.
Yeah. But so Tim, now you come in, I know you have your own company. So who is it that hires you to come in and value these conservation easements?
The impact of value of the conservation
I'm sorry, the impact.
That would be typically right now, the state of Florida is extremely active in pursuing conservation easements on lands.
Do you think that's Dean Saunders' fault?
I think he was yes.
I do too.
He spearheaded the whole conservation easement program within Florida.
Yeah.
And a lot of it has to do with budgets. If the state of Florida has money to spend on these programs and they're adequately funded, then the state or other governmental agencies can pursue conservation easements on properties.
So the state or federal government will contact you and say, like, we need this valuation done. And so then it's your job to kind of figure out the impact. And so whenever you say that you're valuing the impact, do you mean like, obviously, whenever I think of impact, I think of like, oh, there's a building on this piece of land now, but could it be what you're not able to do? Is that the impact?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So like, if you're not able to develop, then you can't get that money from development.
Mm-hmm. And those are the property rights that you are essentially giving up on a given piece of property. Some of the main property rights are subdivision. Yeah. Where if you have a typical, let's just say 1,000-acre ranch, sometimes they'll put it in the terms to where there can only be one split on this 1,000-acre ranch. So you have the option to only subdivide it one time into two 500-acre pieces. And just keep on with this example. Say you have this 1,000-acre ranch, and a lot of times you'll retain, you give up your residential uses, but many times they'll retain, let's just say if there's one parcel split, they'll retain 2 residential units on that property. So this property in the after, well, in the before, you could technically subdivide it into the whatever the underlying zoning allows. But in the after, in this scenario, you're only limited to one parcel split with one house on each theoretical 500-acre tract. And that the state and governmental agencies pursue these easements to keep rural lands rural and to keep agricultural lands in agricultural use.
Yeah, I can't imagine how you begin to put a value, to that. And
Because you're talking about future value as well, right?
yeah,
Because
Yes.
the property could be valued at $8,500 an acre right now, but 5-10 years down the road could be $10,000 an acre. But then you put a conservation easement on it, and remainder rights make them out to $2,500 for just ag land. So and essentially you kind of did a analysis on a theoretical property where you would value the property as unencumbered as it is today using comparable unencumbered fee simple transactions. And you develop that opinion of value, you typically on a price per acre on rural lands. And then that would be the before as unencumbered. And then we do a second analysis of the same property under the proposed terms of the easement, where we would use sales of remainder rights or sales of properties with conservation easements on them, and then compare current sales of encumbered lands to our subject, and that would be the after analysis. The difference between those two numbers is the impact of value of the conservation easement. And that is essentially when I do an appraisal for a conservation easement for these governmental agencies, that's the conclusion.
and so when when these governmental agencies get your valuation in, is that it? I mean, do they go with your recommendation, or is there other steps? Or
There's more steps. Typically, with the state of Florida, they don't hire just one appraiser. There will be 2 appraisers working on the same assignment, inspecting the same property at the same date, and then we'll have a third review appraiser. And these are all private practice people, non-government employees. And that review appraiser, one of our peers, reviews our 2 reports, checks for inconsistencies, and then that review appraiser, after we go through a couple drafts and edits, it goes up to the state of Florida, and the state of Florida will have a review appraiser.
my God.
And then sometimes it comes back with more edits or concerns, and we address those. And then it goes up further to the cabinet. And then after that, that's when there becomes negotiations between the state of Florida or the conservation easement purchaser and the landowner.
Now, I don't know if you necessarily know the answer to this, but this seems like a very long process.
Yes.
Do you know what the timeline is between the time when they identify a property that they'd want and the time that they would close on it? And they being,
I think Dean Saunders would know this answer, but it's over a year, well over a year. And sometimes, and it all depends if this property that the state of Florida is pursuing, if they really want it that bad.
Yeah.
there's multiple people that would like to put a conservation easement, that would like to sell a conservation easement on their property, but for one reason or another, the property may not be appropriate, or there's other more desirable lands or areas for the state of Florida to focus their money on. And sometimes I know that some properties have been on this list for years.
My gosh.
That have been trying to, but there's other more bigger fish to fry, per se.
And so, you know, I forgot my question.
So the way that I've heard it explained is that there's like tiers, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3.
Oh, I know what my question was.
They'll get 100 applications, and they may have the funding for the top 15, top 20. So the top 20, they get bought. The next year, some of them require another application. Some of them just stay in the application pool, and they could potentially move up. They could now be tier 1s this year because all the tier 1s were taken last year, or more people are offering their land for conservation easement.
So the state of Florida will like tell you what it is that they're looking for.
Whatever municipality it is.
Okay.
Yeah, they have different criteria, different rubrics for what they're looking for. It may just be a wildlife corridor that they're like, okay, we need to connect parcel A to parcel B, and this land is right in the center, and we gotta somehow connect those. So it may be a tier 1 right off the bat just because of the location.
Chad, are you actually really smart? And you just
Extremely.
Yeah, he explained it pretty well, probably better than I could have. And that
don't discount yourself. No, I do remember my question now, though, and that has to do with the money of it all. I mean, where does this money come from these municipalities? And I feel like there was just something in the news about maybe our governor not approving something for a conservation easement. I feel like it was something like $100 million. But, what does this mean for tax? Because everything it's all taxpayer money. But so how does that impact taxpayers, and are they mad about it? Are they happy about it? What's kind of the feeling?
Probably a little bit of both, but I think my opinion is from a taxpayer's perspective, I think you get a lot of value from a taxpayer's perspective for conservation easements. Number one, they're typically less than buying the property outright on a price per acre basis. So they can essentially, conserve a couple thousand acres at a fraction of the cost. Also, it keeps the property on the tax roll. And that if the state or federal government buys a property outright, it goes off the tax roll in the respective county. And so keeping these properties on the tax roll, you're essentially protecting them, but without owning the property. And whatever state or federal water management district that purchases, they're not required to maintain these properties or to open them up to the public, and that's costly. This is the maintenance of properties, as any cattle rancher could tell you. They're high, and with the state of Florida essentially protecting these properties without owning them and having that responsibility and additional burden of maintaining properties, I think that produces values for these conservation easement programs from a taxpayer's perspective. But also from a taxpayer's perspective on the other end, these conservation easement properties, they're not open to the public, like a state park or a county park. So, yeah, that's the other side.
Yeah.
Of
Yeah. I could definitely see both points of view, but I think you make a compelling argument for the conservation easement. Were you going to say something, or was I just?
No, I think that the research shows that state and national lands that are open, like parks, lose money. They're not very big income streams. So you leave it in the hands of who are generally the best stewards of the land, which is
The owners.
ranchers, farmers. They want to see their land as nice as possible, and they're going to do everything that it takes. So you put some money back into their pocket, that way that they can retain it, and then they can improve it and keep it the way that it's supposed to be.
and keep it in agricultural production. People have to eat.
Yeah.
It's so true. Actually, I just was reading this article about
I
the.
thought you were going to say I was just eating. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah. I do that every day.
No, I was reading an article about like the price of beef going up because there had been like droughts and kind of a shortage of cattle and very scary times we're living in. So I feel like these, conservation easements can help with that. But more so than that, have you always appraised conservation easements?
I'm appraising them. I'm doing more conservation easement assignments currently
Okay.
than I have. Let's just say the past 5 years, I've done more conservation easement assignments than the previous 5 years, and then probably last year and this year, I've done more than a couple years before, and that it all has to do with funding.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask was what you attribute that to. And that's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The more people that move here, the more money the state has in taxpayer dollars and the more land that we have to protect. So,
Yeah.
Yeah. Makes sense.
I know. I wish that they would have done that in Claremont. It would have cleared up a lot of that traffic on I-4.
Yeah, that 27 traffic.
Lord. Okay. Well, so then you also do some other appraisals, I think.
Yes, I do bank work. I work with other attorneys and lenders. Estate work. It's not just for conservation easement or just conservation lands in general. Although I do personally, I stay away from residential real estate. I do in the office. We do right-of-way work, also industrial lands, just not typically single-family residential homes.
No, it seems like you have a really like niche area.
It is.
Don't really know how many people there are like you.
Believe it or not, there's not too many. There's kind of only a handful of us
I would believe you. Yeah.
specialize in conservation in rural lands, because there's just not that many land ownerships when compared to, let's just say, a single family residential neighborhood where you have thousands.
Yeah. Yeah. Which I wish that there was more, larger tracts of land, less of the hundreds of thousands of single family homes.
More for you to sell?
Yeah.
Are you going to get into some ag land?
Honestly, it's starting to sound like a very lucrative business.
So the bank work that you were saying that you do is kind of what your grandfather founded?
Yeah.
No,
banks,
not so much.
loan?
When I say the bank work, lending.
Lending.
Most farmers and ranchers, they have some sort of mortgage or line of credit going on, and so some of these agricultural lenders hire me to value their land, and sometimes encumbered lands will have a mortgage on them.
Mm-hmm. And then, go ahead.
Oh, and I'll say, well, when these properties sell, just like any other piece of property, a lot of times the potential buyer will take out a loan for take down the property.
And then you were saying that the conservation easements aren't generally eminent domain, but I would assume that you do some appraisal work for eminent domain cases.
Yes, we do.
Yep. We've had some
Scary.
very good
Well,
partners.
sometimes roads have to be widened.
Yeah.
For those thousands of homes, but not if you have a conservation easement. Oh my goodness. Well, Chad, do you have any other?
No, I think I asked all my
That's
questions.
it?
Yeah.
I don't know what questions to ask. That's part of the problem is I'm like so ignorant when it comes to this. But, Tim, do you have anything else to add?
I do. And a lot of times, we, in the beginning of this podcast, we spoke about, a lot of times the reason people place a conservation easement on a property is to get compensated for the money. And the more rights you give up, typically, the more you are compensated. And the more severe restrictions, the more you get compensated. It's a balancing act.
Yeah.
Less you give up, and so that's why, and so it is really a balancing act, and not every conservation easement is the same. Just like every building is not, every building is different.
Agreed.
And so property owners, typically before I get hired or involved, they hash out these terms of these easements about how many parcel splits this property can do, how many rooftops are allowed, what intense agricultural uses are permitted. And the more you give up, typically, the more you get compensated. And so that's kind of in a nutshell, how much there is no set price per acre. There's no set percentage reduction. Every property is unique. Every conservation easement is unique.
Yeah.
In many senses.
Yeah, no, I think that's really important. And we mentioned during the beginning of the podcast that it's a really big decision for these property owners because you are giving up your rights. You're not giving up your ownership, but you are giving up your rights, which is a big, big deal and should not be taken lightly. And so I guess just keep fighting the good fight out there, Tim. I can assure you I won't be stepping on your toes anytime soon.
These conservation easements are fun. It's always good people like Chad, like you were saying. A lot of times I've seen some very beautiful properties that have been preserved via conservation easements. And then although a lot of times we'll get 90% of the way there, and then the deal will fall through for whatever reasons. And that's just like any typical real estate transaction, where one party might pull back for a myriad of reasons. And so that's what I like to say.
Yeah. That's a lot of work and I mean, it's the same thing in this line, of business. It's like a lot of work for not a sure thing, but I think it's important work, especially for conserving Florida and making sure that we have enough water to go around.
Clean water.
Make sure that water's clean.
Yeah, that's right. Okay. Well, we really appreciate you hopping on here today, Tim. And
thank you.
I've definitely learned a lot, but not too much that I could be dangerous with it,
We'll see.
Yeah. I will not be, like I said, stepping on your toes. I won't be in your line of work anytime soon.
Well, thanks for having me, you two.
Thank you, sir.
We hope to get you back on
appreciate it.
soon.
Yes, please do.
Thank you.